Is getting better with money on your resolution list again this year? Maybe you've already downloaded a budgeting app, promised yourself you're going to track every penny, or sworn that this is the year that you finally get it together. Well, here's what no one actually tells you. Budgets don't work. If they actually did work, you wouldn't need to keep making the same resolution year after year. Hi, my name's Catherine Morgan. Welcome to the first episode in the Money Myths series, where we're going to bust some of those money myths and beliefs that keep you stuck and stressed. I'm a former financial advisor turned financial coach and money psychology expert, here to help you embody a new relationship with money. And today we're talking about one of the most persistent money myths. I just need a strict budget to stop overspending. Let me tell you, as a recovered emotional overspender, this does not work. This is a money myth, and this is why it keeps you stuck. At this time of year, so many of us think that drawing up a budget is the answer to our financial resolutions. In fact, 38% of us plan to manage our finances better in the new year. That figure comes from the YouGov's 2025 New Year Resolution Survey, which polled more than 18,000 adults across 17 markets. And in this finding, YouGov noted that in addition to physical health being on our list, our resolutions list, 38% of respondents aim to manage their finances better in the new year. Well, if you've ever tried to follow a diet style budget, you'll know it's a recipe for rebellion. Budgets are built on willpower, and they ignore the real reasons that we overspend. They can actually trigger a response to restriction, can create a lot of money shame when we don't stick to the budget and don't treat the actual symptom of spending. Instead, they actually look at the behavior of the spending and not the real cause, like how you feel in that moment before you spend. And I know, because I've been there as a naturally impulsive person, the word budget used to make me want to run a million miles. I didn't even want to look at my numbers because it felt like all the joy would be sucked out of my life. Like, who dare tell me I can't spend money? And I can still picture my dad emptying his money coin jar on the lounge floor when I was a little girl. And it was really fun counting the money. But the idea of replicating that as an adult made me feel like I was back in the boring maths lesson at school. The minute I tried any strict spreadsheets, this inner part of me would just shout out, "You're not the boss of me." And I'd end up treating myself even more. And looking at numbers was just too overwhelming. And this is the thing. The emotional truth is that overspending isn't a sign that you're bad with money. It's not a sign that you need to go set a budget. It's so often that your mind is keeping you in this pattern because it's familiar, because it feels safe. And very often we find with emotional spending, it's soothing some kind of stress. And so we soothe that stress with a bit of retail therapy or chasing that little dopamine hit, especially at this time of the year when the shops have all of their Christmas sales. And we get this emotional dopamine rush when we add something to the basket. And sometimes just actually filling a shopping basket is as emotionally rewarding as it is to actually even receive the thing that we've put in the emotional basket, right? And this void is not going to be replaced by a budget planner. Budgets don't speak to any of that, which is why they often fail us. Now, a little side note, if you have ADHD or you suspect that you might be neurodivergent, the idea of sticking to any budget can feel doubly hard. ADHD can make it really tough to plan ahead, to remember deadlines, to even remember to track your spending. Impulse spending is a really common coping mechanism, and the quick dopamine hit from buying something provides a very temporary relief, which afterwards then can make you feel like money's just disappeared. And inattention around money, which is really common with ADHD, can also lead to missing bill payments and extra charges from your credit card provider or your bank. And so it's really important to just notice that. If that is relevant for you, then there's a couple of quick wins that I can share with you to try instead of budgeting. Now, traditional budgets often are very dull. They feel very restrictive. Just the word budget is not great. So the first thing to do is to change the narrative. Think about a different word that might feel more enticing than budgeting. For example, spending plan was my way of giving my money a purpose in a way that felt forward focused and optimistic rather than taking away. So that's the first step, is to rename that budget planner. The second thing is to focus on small achievable milestones. For example, improving your credit score or tackling one category of overspend, and then celebrate each one to create that dopamine hit and positive momentum. Don't try and tackle all of the money stuff. It will just leave you feeling really overwhelmed. The other tip is to use visual cues and regular check-ins. So tracking one spending category at a time on a weekly basis is much more achievable than trying to review everything once a month. Creating separate money pots or savings accounts with pictures for different goals so that you can see your progress is really helpful. When I went through this process myself, I switched my bank account to one of the online challenger banks like Starling or Monzo, where you can actually put pictures behind your money pots. And this was very helpful in those moments when you want to go spend and you've got to move money from another pot that might be allocated to your holiday pot. And suddenly you start to think, what is more important? Would I prefer to go on holiday next year, or do I really need another book from Amazon? It really gets you thinking differently, because that visual aspect, especially in neurodivergence, is really key. The other tip I would share is to experiment with tools and gamify the process, like make it fun. Try different apps or tracking methods to see what keeps you engaged. Delete the ones that you don't use so they don't clutter your mind, and turn savings or reduce spending into a game. Challenge yourself to reduce your Amazon book purchases, maybe that's just me, by 50% for a month, and then redirect that money into one of your other money pots. This can be really rewarding, especially as you are succeeding with some of those smaller goals. I've already mentioned about the reframing of language, but I'm going to say this again because I think swapping out words like budget or planning or habit for something that just feels more inviting. Money rituals, for example, might feel more soft for you. Having a money date might be curious and playful and fun rather than planning money. Or just small steps rather than habits. Habits can sometimes feel quite pressurized. Everyone's got these new habits, new money habits, new health habits, and I think that if you can reframe the language makes such a big difference, and choosing words that make the process feel nurturing rather than punishing. Also, identify triggers and build in a cooling off period. When you buy your home insurance, car insurance, you get like a 14-day, you can change your mind. Now, when you buy things, often they will have a return policy. But the other thing to think about is leave it in your shopping basket before you check it out. Give yourself a natural cooling off period. I have a rule in my household where I don't make any big financial decisions during the week, because if I'm bored, I'm stressed, I'm multitasking, none of those experiences are going to play out in a positive way when you're making money decisions. So implement a 24-hour or 48-hour cooling off period. Leave items in your shopping basket. Your brain will still get the dopamine hit of adding it into your basket without the financial consequences. And the other step here is to celebrate everything. Grab a gratitude journal or record a short video clip to mark every financial celebration. Doesn't matter how small. Celebration and gratitude, we know, is the one thing, it's the one emotion that's going to lead you towards acceptance and joy. Brené Brown did some incredible research around how to get into more joy and happiness, which I know is definitely something that we all want more of, is to practice gratitude. And even if you don't feel like expressing gratitude with one of your money milestones, do it anyway. If you're paying off debt and it doesn't feel great because you're like, oh, like I've spent all this money, and you start shaming yourself, still celebrate the fact that I am making this decision to make these money steps, and celebrate that. Celebration really reinforces progress and keeps you motivated. Automate and simplify as well. So set up those direct debits for recurring payments, automate those minimum credit card payments, and try using some of the Roundup Money apps to save spare change without having to think about it. There are a whole bunch of money apps out there right now, whether that's through your bank or through other money apps, such as Clio. Some of the, like Starling Bank, for example, they have an option within the money pots where you can automatically round up your spending to go into one of your money pots. I've had clients of mine that have come back listening to episodes in the past over Christmas, and a year later, they've ended up with a few £100s in their Christmas pot, and they didn't even have to do anything. They weren't really even consciously aware of it. Now, a few £100s might just seem like not very much money, but actually, if that's going to provide you with most of your Christmas gifts for the following year, that's a great tool to get into practice. And also turn your impulsivity into a superpower. One of the things I really learned about myself through my own diagnosis of ADHD was I would always beat myself up for being so frivolous or impulsive. And I really learned to practice a lot of self-forgiveness and redirect that impulsive energy into a superpower. I can make really quick decisions. Some people can't. And so actually those frequent impulse decisions can really support you. Direct that towards frequent impulse savings. Make the savings behavior as exciting as spending. And I want you to write that one down, because that for me was a really significant shift. When you can make saving more exciting or as exciting as spending, then suddenly things start to change. And this is where really thinking about the meaning and the purpose behind money is going to support you to make that savings goal really, really exciting. Focus as well on short-term purpose as well as long-term purpose. In the money space, if you're listening to other channels or podcasts about money, there is lots of advice about planning for the future. Pension contributions, ISA contributions, all of those things, thinking ahead. Now, for you who may be neurodivergent or have a more impulsive relationship with money, long-term just feels like a million miles away. So focus on short-term goals first. Break the long-term financial tasks into short milestones and then just automate the rest. Give every pound a purpose, aligned with your values. Knowing why you're saving or spending makes it more satisfying. So make it fun and set some boundaries. Join an accountability circle. Learn how to say no to some of those unnecessary purchases by invoking things like the cooling off period. Setting boundaries really protects your time, energy, and money. And that might even be saying no to other people and putting your needs first rather than financially rescuing other people, or maybe feeling like you have to pay for the food bill when you're celebrating with your friends over Christmas. Learn to say no and make those decisions to look after your needs first. Now, you can watch or listen to my other episodes on how to manage money when you have ADHD. I'll pop a link in the show notes to that other episode. But I want to also now move into sharing something with you that's really going to support you around an alternative way to budgeting. So instead of a one-size-fits-all budget, I want you to try a values-based spending plan. Notice how I've changed the name. Notice how it's values-based. Now, what does this actually mean? The first thing I want you to do is to spend some time contemplating your 3 core values. Your values are the things that make life meaningful to you: creativity, freedom, health, adventure, joy, peace. All of these different, it could be a word, it could be a feeling. My word this year that interconnects with my values is relationships. So I've been thinking about how can I align how I make money decisions this year around relationships. What trips can I book that will expand out my relationships? Where can I take my family that's going to make that relationship part light up? Where is it that we can go with the children this year? And so sometimes changing your word for the year can be really helpful. But thinking about your core values, what is it that makes life meaningful for you? Not for anybody else, for you. And then what happens is you start to give yourself permission. You start to give yourself permission to spend, save, invest in alignment with your value system. A lot of my clients, when we talk about investing, they may decide, for example, that one of their values is freedom, or one of their values might be love. And so when it comes to making investment decisions, it's important for them to weed out those sin stocks in the stock market: pharmaceutical companies, war manufacturing, pornography companies, those kind of industries where maybe they don't necessarily agree with how that company is making money. And so in alignment with their value system, they may choose more of an ethical or sustainable strategy. And it gives that person permission to make those investment decisions based on their value system. And the same can apply for budgeting. So give yourself permission. Budgets are like, you're not allowed to do this. You can only spend this amount of money. Very, very restrictive. Even the word budget, like the word budget just reminds me of economic policy, budgets that are set by the government. It's control outside of ourselves. So giving yourself permission to align how you get to choose how money is spent or saved or invested is going to make such a big difference. And having a value-based plan says, I get to spend, save, invest on what matters most to me. So ask yourself, does this align with my values? When you're making a spending decision or a saving decision or an investing decision, does this align with my values? So before you beat yourself up, if it aligns with your values, if knowledge is one of your highest values, you go get that book on Amazon, okay? And it's a moment to really just pause and consider, is this the right thing for me? And this leads me into the next tip I wanted to share with you, which is to track your money emotions. Tracking the feelings that you are working through when you're making your money decisions is as important as tracking the actual numbers. Noticing how spending aligned with your values makes you feel, whereas impulse buys might leave you feeling empty or shameful or judging of yourself, whereas carefully considered values-based alignment might make you feel really grounded, really abundant. And you can do this by just grabbing a journal, a notepad, and every time you're about to make a decision, just notice how you feel. Notice how you feel. If you need the dopamine hit, and you go do the spend, do this exercise afterwards. It can still be as powerful. Think about what was the emotion you were experiencing in that moment before. Maybe you were stressed at work. Maybe you just had an argument with your partner. Maybe your kids, tearing your hair out over the kids not eating their dinner. Think about what was happening in that moment just before. And make a note of that. Write it down. Keep a log and notice any patterns. Notice any patterns. And I remember one of my clients quite recently, actually, she was trying to follow this very strict budgeting method that just wasn't really working. And so she swapped over to this value-based approach. And she wrote down that her core values were family and freedom. And so she stopped telling herself that she wasn't allowed to go out for dinner and instead asked whether the meal would create genuine family connection. And she naturally started spending less on mindful shopping, or mindless shopping, should I say, because it didn't really serve her values and it was guilt-based decision making, and really started to shift this budgeting myth that it had to be a certain way and that budgeting is all about willpower. And it's rooted in deeper money beliefs that most of us don't even realize that we're carrying. Beliefs like, I can't trust myself with money, or if I look at money, I'll figure out that I'm failing. And these unconscious beliefs in our body can stop us from making better decisions with money. Not because you're forcing yourself to behave differently, but because you're no longer operating from a place of fear, scarcity, or shame. And shifting those beliefs starts with something really simple, something that you can practice right now, which is the gift of permission. This week's gift is permission. You can hold whatever you're experiencing and give yourself permission to be aware of whatever emotional state you are in when it comes to making financial decisions, especially this time of the year. Bringing your full attention to right now in this moment. Where are you? How are you feeling? Rather than striving to fix everything or to change our emotions, we're just wanting to allow everything to be experienced without judgment. And if you've been waiting for someone to say that you don't have to get it perfect, this is your permission. You have permission to spend messy, to trust yourself with money and to prioritize your values over rigid budgeting rules. We don't need a rigid budget to achieve emotional freedom. Instead, what we need is permission to feel and to be the most authentic version of yourself. And giving yourself permission will lift you out of those beliefs that you've got to do more in order to be worthy, that you have to do more in order to be more financially successful. So this is my invitation to you to stop seeking validation from external influences and to recognize that you are allowed to feel, you are allowed to rest, you are allowed to be imperfect with money. And this kind of self-permission really sits at the heart of healing money myths as well. When you stop judging yourself for not fitting a budget or for having debt, is you open up this space to make really beautiful aligned choices from a place of love and compassion, not from shame. So try this simple mini exercise. Write down 3 values that feel true for you. And for the next 7 days, pause before each money decision and ask yourself, is this aligned with my values? And at the end of the week, jot down how these aligned choices made you feel. No spreadsheets, no budget plans, just curiosity. And that's today's myth, officially busted. If this shifted something for you and you're watching this on YouTube, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. We've got more myths to explore together. I've also created a free guide called The 5 Hidden Money Beliefs Keeping You Stuck that digs even deeper into some of the psychological patterns that may be sabotaging your relationship with money. You'll find the link in the description below. It's completely free and it comes with a really lovely practice to start shifting those beliefs, which is a great time of year to do it. So head over to themoneypanel.co.uk/beliefs. And until next time, remember, it's not about the money, it's about values-based decisions. I'll see you next week.